Hi, I'm Sarah Marlette, a holistic nutritionist with my master's in functional medicine and human nutrition. As a mom of two little ones, I know how overwhelming nutrition advice can feel, especially when you're trying to make it work in real life. That's why my mission is simple to give you tools, not rules, habits that actually work with your hormones and metabolism, not against them. Here's the formula for every episode: one quick science backed lesson, three practical tools you can use right away, and three hormone friendly recipes you can use in 20 minutes or less. Welcome to the NTG Method Podcast, where little habits create lasting results. Hey, friends, and welcome to the very first episode of the NTG Method Podcast. We're starting with a big one: body recomposition. Fat loss while protecting lean mass and your hormones. Here's the problem. Most body recomposition advice ignores hormones. That's why so many women stall, burn out, or feel like their body is working against them. But the good news, you can absolutely change your body composition without wrecking your hormones or metabolism. If you've ever tried to lose fat and felt stuck, this episode's for you. Let's dive in. So what exactly is body recomposition? It's not just about losing weight, it's about losing fat while maintaining or even gaining lean mass. So if body recomposition is a goal, you might be wondering, where does the actual fat loss and muscle gain come from? It starts with understanding your daily energy burn, or something called your total daily energy expenditure, which I'm quickly going to break down. So your total daily energy expenditure, aka your daily energy burn, is broken into four categories: your BMR, NEAT, EAT, and TEF. So your BMR is your basal metabolic rate, and this accounts for 60 to 70% of your metabolism. And this includes things like survival function. Next, we have NEAT, which also includes NEPA. So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and NEPA is non-exercise physical activity. And this accounts for upwards of 15% of your metabolism. Think of this as movement outside of your workouts: walking, mowing the lawn, house chores, fidgeting, taking the stairs. Next up, we have exercise activity, which roughly accounts for about 5 to maybe 10% of your metabolism. And these are our planned workouts. Next, we have thermic effect of foods. So certain foods do certain things in the body, with protein followed by fiber having the highest thermic effect, meaning your body has to produce more energy to break these down. Translation: most of your burn doesn't come from your workouts. It comes from muscle, daily movement, supported hormones, and digestion of certain foods like protein and fiber. So what drives our BMR, which is going to account for most of our daily burn? Lean mass is going to be a big one. So muscle burns more calories at rest, So more muscle equals a higher metabolism. Even just 5 pounds of muscle can raise your basal metabolic rate by 50 to 75 calories per day. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, so let me put this into perspective. Over a year, that alone can translate to roughly 5 to 8 pounds of fat loss without changing anything else. Your thyroid hormone is going to impact your BMR greatly. So your thyroid hormone set the metabolic pace for the body. Low thyroid can drop your BMR by 20 to 40%. That's why getting the foundations right is so important, like protein and fiber, strength training, blood sugar balance, rest and recovery, which we're going to cover in detail in today's episode. And last but not least, things like age, gender, and genetics matter too, but not as much as muscle and thyroid. Those are the strongest levels for a BMR. Since I mentioned gender, let's quickly talk about gender differences. So women generally have a lower BMR than men. We have less lean mass and we have more fat mass, meaning we burn fewer calories at rest. Testosterone gives men an advantage, and they burn even more just while sitting still. And that's exactly why fat loss is more delicate for women. Let's talk about the first bucket when we're thinking about why fat loss is delicate for women: fertility protection. So for women, the process looks different than men when it comes to fat loss. Yes, of course, fat loss still requires a caloric deficit. I'm not saying that, but we need to go low and slow. Why? Because our physiology is designed to protect fertility. When calories drop too low, we do all the things: fasting, over exercising. The body lowers thyroid output, slowing our metabolism and conserving energy. This isn't a flaw, ladies. This is a protective mechanism. It's also important to mention fat loss is more delicate for women because we run off different rhythms than men. So men mainly run off of one rhythm, the circadian rhythm, which is a 24-hour body clock that influences so many things from mood, digestion, and metabolism. I'm going to do a detailed podcast on circadian rhythms where we'll get more into the nitty-gritty. Women also run off a circadian rhythm, but we also run off our infradian rhythm. And this is a monthly cycle that shifts energy, mood, appetite, and metabolism. When I say our infradian rhythm, the easiest way to think about this is our menstrual cycle. So stress doesn't just hit our circadian rhythm, it also disrupts our monthly rhythm too. High stress, high cortisol, these are interchangeable terms, but it throws off things like ovulation, it can lower progesterone, and it can make PMS worse, increase our cravings, and make recovery feel harder, especially in the second half of our cycle, which is known as our luteal phase. Hormonal consequences of dieting for women, we have them, they're there. Again, this is so different for women than men because of our infradian rhythm. And here's what it can look like. Your cycles can become shorter, they can become longer, and they can even disappear. PMS can worsen. Ultimately, your thyroid output can also slow, especially the conversion of T4 to T3, your body's main metabolic hormone. Remember, your thyroid sets the metabolic pace for the body. Research actually shows menstrual irregularities are common in dieting, even when we're just at a moderate caloric deficit. So the scale may drop at first, but fat loss will often stall and it often rebounds, making it feel like we're on a merry-go-round. And here's the issue. Quick fixes come with a cost. So many women are like, I'm just going to do all of these things to get ready for this event and I'm not going to worry about it. Harsh diets bring quick results, yes, but at a cost. And here's the cost. It's going to increase cortisol, your stress hormone. It's going to disrupt things like ovulation. And if you do it long enough, it's going to mess with your thyroid hormone. The result, you're going to break down more muscle long term. This is going to increase things like belly fat and result in hormonal chaos that is going to take a decent amount of time to recover from. Let's talk a little bit about how this all impacts our stress receptors. So women have a stronger HPA axis response, just meaning that we're more susceptible to stressors. So your HPA axis response is a system that regulates cortisol. Due to the fact that we operate on an infradian rhythm too, stress is going to hit us harder. And Research shows this difference is especially strong in our luteal phase, that week or two before our period, when cortisol reactivity naturally runs higher. I hear from so many of my one-on-one clients that they feel like they're constantly gaining and losing the same 5 pounds over and over again, and specifically the week or two before your period. So your luteal phase, and there's a reason your luteal phase feels different. And so I want to talk about this quickly. So your luteal phase is your high hormone phase. Progesterone's going to increase. If you wear an Oura ring or a Whoop, you're going to notice that your HRV naturally declines. This is because our cortisol naturally increases and our blood sugar is naturally less stable. We're also going to have shifts in cravings and higher demand for protein. Many women, like I said, feel like they're constantly gaining and losing these same 5 pounds over and over again, but research shows us it's mostly water retention and due to slower digestion. This is what I often see with clients too. They're like, well, I'm just going to do more. I'm going to over exercise. I'm going to cut my calories. I'm going to run a little harder. I'm going to take on another workout. But stacking your HIIT workouts and doubling up on your cardio or maybe a caloric deficit is all going to work against your female physiology. You're going to spike your stress even more. And this is going to, if you do this every single month, push your body into a catabolic state, meaning you're going to break down your muscle for fuel, slower recovery, more bloating, more cravings, which can then cause you to eat more food than your body needs. And then you're going to feel burnout. You're constantly going to feel tired. So the big takeaway is women adapt faster to stressors. We need to make sure that we're living in tune with our circadian and infradian rhythm. And this is why we plateau sooner than men, because we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and we're actually working against our physiology. So when we're approaching this, we know that fat loss is delicate for women. What's the solution? We need to go slow. A gentle caloric deficit layered on top of the foundational items, which I will get into in more detail, but our protein and fiber, our strength training, our blood sugar stability. This lets the body adapt without shutting down our metabolism or hormones. Think of it like walking down a staircase instead of jumping off a ledge. Small, steady steps keep hormones balanced and fat loss sustainable. Going back to the very beginning, why is hormonal balance important? Because your thyroid is such a big lever in your BMR, impacting 60 to 70% of your total daily energy expenditure, your total calorie burn. So if fat loss feels harder than it should, it's not willpower, it's physiology. And one of the biggest players here is working against our infradian rhythm. And when we work against our infradian rhythm, we're compounding stress. And that's where we're headed next, how stress hormones drive and impact weight gain. Cortisol isn't all bad. So cortisol is our stress hormone. So I'm going to use those as interchangeable. Cortisol, stress hormone. In the morning, we want cortisol naturally high. It's what gets us out of bed. It's what makes us feel bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It can even support things like fat burning and lower inflammation. The problem is when cortisol is chronically elevated, when it's chronically high. This is what drives things like cravings, belly fat storage, poor recovery, and disrupted sleep. We have actual research that shows chronically high cortisol can reduce lean mass, lowering your resting burn, decreasing the calories you burn at rest, and ultimately worsening your blood sugar control. The more lean mass you have, the more muscle you have, the better blood sugar control you have, which we'll talk about in the next section. This suppresses your NEAT, your daily movement. Going back to the very beginning, suppressing NEAT can reduce the calories you burn at rest up to 15%. Your daily movement, research shows, naturally declines when we stress. This interferes with thyroid conversion. I'm going to do an entire episode on thyroid health, but this is a huge one. Chronic stress, we know, is going to inhibit thyroid conversion and mess with that T3, which is our active thyroid hormone. It disrupts sleep and recovery. I'm going to do a whole episode on circadian rhythms, but we actually have research that disrupted sleep lowers the calories that you burn at rest. It drives our affinity for higher caloric foods, specifically high fat and high carb foods. Research shows that can even lead to an additional 400 calories in a day when we're stressed out. And here's why this matters too, especially with the sleep component. Sleep is when your body does its repair, its regenerative work. Poor sleep, whether it's not enough or poor quality, compounds everything. It impairs insulin sensitivity, so it worsens blood sugar control. It can impact your gut health. It can increase gut permeability, what we call leaky gut, increasing inflammation, weakens immunity, alters hormone balance, drives up appetite, drives up cravings and appetite, and even impairs our cognitive health. So I just want to reiterate that, and I'm going to talk about this more, but the disrupting the sleep and recovery is so important because so many women think that, sleeping in and resting and recovery is earned. It is not earned, it's required. And here's where we fall into the trap. We want to do more because we're not seeing results. We want to work out harder, stricter diets, but this often backfires. Why? Hope you're seeing the theme that cortisol increases. It can slow your thyroid, progesterone drops. When we have chronically elevated cortisol, your body actually breaks down progesterone to make more cortisol. And then we notice our cycles completely shift, whether they shut down entirely. And now this brings me, to one of the biggest cortisol triggers, blood sugar. Unsteady blood sugar is a massive stressor for the body. Stress hormones and blood sugar are tightly linked. Every spike or crash, or one of the biggest dangers I see in my practice, is chronically low blood sugar is a danger to the body. Cortisol has to step in to stabilize poor blood sugar, whether too high or too low. This means if your blood sugar is constantly rocky or unstable, or what I see with so many women not eating enough and over exercising, is your blood sugar is constantly low. This is cortisol is going to come in to help bring up blood sugar in the absence of food. I want to talk about low blood sugar for a minute because it's something I see so often. Low blood sugar does three things. It raises hunger hormones and increases your desire to want to eat carbohydrates and suppresses satiety signals. The result is feeling out of control with food. So if you've ever gone out to dinner and you showed up with low blood sugar, you're like skipped a meal and you're like, well, I'm going to go in with a game plan. I'm going to be really good. I'm only going to have one slice of pizza and then I'm going to move on. But the issue is these hunger hormones, ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and neuropeptide Y is our carb craving hormone, they stay chronically elevated. So you end up eating more and you feel worse. And this isn't a lack of willpower. This is your physiology trying to protect you. Chronically low blood sugar is such a stressor for the body, ladies. It pushes cortisol higher, suppresses thyroid function, and it's going to mess with your progesterone. And our biggest common triggers of low blood sugar, skipping and delaying meals is a big one. Steep caloric deficits, excessive fasting, over-exercising, exercising without fuel, and then the obvious, too many refined carbs or sugar on their own. But the good news, you can naturally balance your blood sugar without doing drastic things and completely removing carbohydrates in the foods we love. I'm going to do an entire episode on blood sugar, but here are some of my favorite ways: building every meal around protein and fiber, walking after meals, even if it's just 5 minutes. Research has shown that makes an incredible difference. You can walk 5 to 10 minutes. You can do chores around the house. And my personal favorite is a handful of arugula with a little bit of lemon in water before a meal. Not only does it support things like digestion and my liver health, but it's a beautiful way to support blood sugar and it's delicious. So the quick takeaway is stable blood sugar equals stable hormones equals stable stress. I need to talk about fasting and female hormones because this is a big one. And I used to be such a until I messed up my thyroid and my cycle and I stopped ovulating. Now, fasting is tricky. So it's always a hot topic for good reason. And fasting can work for some women. So I'm not sitting here saying that, this is the only way. And I will talk a little bit about circadian fasting at the end, but it can work for some women, especially when stress is low and sleep is solid. But for many, fasting backfires. Why? Because when you go too long without food, your body has to keep blood sugar up and stable. How does it do this? By releasing more cortisol, our stress hormone. And that may steady glucose in the short term, but it comes at a cost if we continue to do this over and over again. If you do it here and there, you have a busy life, you're a mom like me, it's okay here and there, but it's when we do it chronically. In fact, in a 2019 trial by Hutchinson and colleagues, they found that early time restricted feeding did improve insulin sensitivity in some women, in some overweight women. And I'm only going to be referencing studies in today's episode that were performed in women. And the women were aged between 30 and 45. And that's a good thing, right? But here's the kicker. In women who were under stress, the benefits were blunted. Why? Because cortisol rose during the fast and offset the blood sugar improvements. So take fasting with a grain of salt. It's not for everyone. And if you have a big stress load, you have a lot going on in your life, it's probably not going to work for you. I think it works for most men, but for most women, especially in your reproductive years, leave the skipping breakfast and white knuckling it to noon. And here's where I land when it comes to fasting. I think most people, unless you're pregnant and you're postpartum and, you're a week out from your period, generally do fine with a 12-hour fast overnight. That's like having your last meal at 7 and not eating again until 7 a.m. I'm not anti-fasting either. I'm pro-circadian aligned eating, which I'm doing an entire episode on, and we're going to talk a little bit more below. But that just means eating more of your calories early in the day when your metabolism and things like insulin sensitivity are strongest, and letting your body naturally fast overnight. It works with your biology, not against it. The bottom line when it comes to fasting, it can be a helpful tool for some, but it's not a rule. And for many women who already have a ton of stress, it's something I would say, leave in that toolbox, don't come for it, because it can just make you feel less unsteady, increase your cortisol, all of those things. Now that we've covered hormones, stress, blood sugar, fasting, and how this can all impact fat loss, let's pull it together with what I call the core NTG foundations when it comes to successful, sustainable fat loss and happy hormones, because that's really important. And we're going to dive deeper into this with the 3 tools below, but we want to make sure we're having protein and fiber at every meal. This naturally supports our blood sugar. We want to make sure that we're having stable blood sugar by not fasting too long, not excessively fasting. Did I say that? Not fasting too long, not excessively cutting calories, not over exercising, not skipping meals, not under eating. We want to make sure we're doing some type of strength training and daily movement. We want to make sure that we're living in alignment with our circadian and infradian rhythms, which I'm going to talk about below. And remember, less is more. I hope from this episode and when we get into the tools that you truly start to see that by working with your female physiology, you're creating more space for your body to do what it was designed to do, and that you can do less and achieve more. Going slower with smaller intentional changes helps to keep your cortisol steady, helps to keep your hormones happy, and helps to allow fat loss to feel sustainable. Now, before we jump into the tools that I'm going to be sharing with you guys and that are life-changing tools for me, especially at 4 months postpartum with a 19-month-old and a 4-month-old, I do want to talk about the calorie piece because I don't want you to think that I'm saying calories aren't important. Are calories everything? No. But they're important. And yes, fat loss does require a caloric deficit. But the issue occurs when I see one-on-one with clients is they want to come out of the gate slashing a bunch of calories without getting the foundations in place. And when you do that, your physiology pushes back. That means, again, stalled metabolism, disrupted cycle, wonky thyroid, and your body becomes more and more stressed. And this is really important too for those who are on a fertility journey, right? You want your body to feel safe. So before we start with a small intentional deficit, which this is how we're going to close out our episode, let's talk about top 3 tools that you can add in today that have been life-changing for me and something I have all of my clients focus on. Tool number 1 is going to be protein and fiber at every meal. Your anchor habit is going to be build every plate around protein and fiber. Why does this matter? Protein builds and maintains and protects lean mass. When you are in a deficit, you're naturally going to lose lean mass. Protein helps to attenuate the loss of lean mass. You will see people on Instagram say like 1 gram of protein is 4 calories and 1 gram of carbs is 4 calories. They're the same. They're not the same. Protein helps to attenuate the loss of lean mass. It has that highest thermic effect, which is why protein is power here. It raises your BMR. It has the highest thermic effect, about 20 to 30%. So we want to make sure that at every meal, you can identify your protein, followed by your fiber. If you're overwhelmed by the protein and fiber, start with protein first, then add on the fiber. Fiber steadies blood sugar, boosts satiety, just like protein, helps to support estrogen clearance, lowers inflammation, all that good stuff. And research shows when women who don't hit their protein target during fat loss lose more lean mass compared to those who do. Even at the same calories, protein protects your muscles going all the way back to the top. Why is this important? Lean mass is one of the biggest levers for your BMR, so that accounts for 60% of your total daily burn. And let's be clear, protein won't bulk, you guys. That's an excessive caloric intake. It builds lean tissue, supports thyroid conversion, blood sugar balance, stabilizes your cycle, all that good stuff. Not all protein is created equal. Quality matters. So I created a free protein guide for you guys that you can download. And as a bonus for this episode on Wednesday, I am releasing my protein episode. It's a quick 10 minutes, just kind of breaking down some of the tools and tips and getting more into it. But in the interim, download the guide. So how do you apply this tool? Aiming for about 80 to 120 grams of protein per day. Now, I know that's a wide range. If you want to get more detail, download the protein guide where I teach you how to calculate it. If you're really overwhelmed, start with 80 and build on. I want you to aim anywhere from 25 to 30 grams of fiber. If that's way too much fiber for you and you have a sensitive gut, go low and slow and start with about 20 grams of fiber per day and focus on fermented foods in addition. So like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, yogurt, all that delicious stuff. Here's your behavioral anchor for tool 1. Plate first. Every time you build a meal, can you identify your protein and your fiber? So maybe at breakfast, you're like, I've got my eggs, I've got my cottage cheese, I've got my edamame, my lupini beans. And then can you identify your fiber, whether it's fruit or roasted veggies or whatever it might be? Then build your plate from there. Tool number 2, which this is one of my favorite tools. If you've been following me for a while, you might know what this is. Sync meals with your rhythm. So your anchor habit here is to front load your day with a protein fiber rich breakfast, which piggybacks right off habit 1, right? It's tool 1, excuse me. So this is habit stacking. Why this matters. Morning meals trigger higher diet induced thermogenesis than evening meals. Diet induced thermogenesis just means your body burns more calories while digesting food, and you burn more calories by doing this in the morning than the evening. Now, I just want to say this before I go any further. I'm not saying that you can't eat a bigger dinner and a smaller breakfast and not lose weight. Of course you can. But what I'm trying to get at the heart of is working with your body, not against it. So let me share 2 studies really quickly that were performed specifically in women. In one randomized controlled trial of women who were overweight, those who ate a bigger breakfast and smaller dinner lost more weight and had better insulin sensitivity than the women who ate a smaller breakfast, bigger dinner when calories were the same. In another study, overweight women who ate more at lunch instead of dinner had greater weight loss and better blood sugar control. And I want to round this out from a hormonal standpoint. There was a study that was performed in women with PCOS. They found that women who ate a bigger breakfast, smaller dinner, ovulated more, had better blood sugar control. So these studies together show that shifting calories earlier in the day work with your circadian rhythms, which naturally work with your infradian rhythm, supporting weight loss and metabolic health. Again, why do more when you can do less? Fun fact, your body actually burns more calories digesting food in the morning than at night, which is kind of getting back to what I'm talking about with your morning meals triggering diet-induced thermogenesis. Again, if this one stresses you out, just leave this tool in your toolkit because, of course, you can lose fat by eating a bigger dinner and smaller breakfast. But this is all about syncing up with our rhythms. So that is a fun fact. Okay, so how would you apply this? I want you to start with at least 30 grams of protein. If you're looking to build lean mass, if you're over the age of 35, I'm 37, I'm postpartum, I'm trying to get closer to 40 to 50 grams of protein in that first meal. If you are perimenopause, 10 out of 10 suggests this. The week before your period, also work on getting a little bit more protein in that first meal because with that increased progesterone comes higher need for protein. You don't need to eat protein. You don't need to eat breakfast within 30 minutes of waking. I don't like to get hung up on those like really specific items. I say aim for breakfast within 1 to 2 hours of waking. If that seems really ridiculous, try to get it in at least before 10 a.m. You need to make this realistic for you in order for it to be sustainable. Your behavioral anchor is a power protein breakfast. Earlier in the day, I should also mention that research shows if we had to pick a meal that was most critical for protein, it's your first meal of the day. Habit tool 1 and 2 are a perfect stack. Tool 3 is strength and steps for hormonal resilience. So your anchor habit is going to be strength train consistently and walk daily. Strength training is the single most powerful way to protect lean mass, raise metabolism, and signal your body to burn fat without breaking down tissue. And I don't think you need to be like lifting crazy heavy weights and like flipping tires out there. You just need a progressive overload, meaning you're lifting to near failure. So I like to do a mix of holding my children and my 60-pound dog from the third floor to the first floor when they're napping to using light weights. So find what works for you. Find what you enjoy. I believe more than anything, you should do things that fill your cup, not drain your cup. I am the Forrest Gump of walking. So if you've been here for a while, walking is the perfect complement to all of this. Not only does it lower stress and improve blood sugar, improve digestion, motility, stress. We have research that I already say that it supports your hormones and your metabolism. Walking falls into that NEAT and NEPA bucket of 15% of your metabolism. And I just want to talk a little bit more about walking because it's just my jam and so many people overlook it. So you're naturally going to improve blood sugar after walking. You're naturally going to lower your stress after walking. And gentle movement can actually improve thyroid conversion, supporting progesterone, supporting ovulation, and things like estrogen clearance. For fat loss while protecting lean mass, the goal isn't endless cardio. Oh, I used to be cardio queen. It's progressive overload and strength training plus walking. I also love Pilates. I want to put a little clip in there. Pilates is one of my favorite tools ever because it's such a strong stability movement. Peter Attia has a great episode on how stability is the cornerstone in which strength is delivered, but that's for another time. Okay, I could talk forever. I got to reel it in. Research shows women who strength train during fat loss, preserve 2 to 3 times more lean mass compared to cardio alone. For my cardio queens, I was her, she was me, no judgment. And here's another hormone tip. If you're training hard, especially in the luteal phase, don't go in depleted. I generally suggest having some type of protein and or carb snack before workouts. This is going to help protect muscle and improve things like recovery. I'm not in my optimal era with 2 babies. I'm in my consistency era. Oh my gosh. So it normally looks just like some fruit. And going back to the week before your period, you can still train, but just cut back on the intensity of training. I don't believe in cycle syncing your workouts, and that's going to be my hormone episode coming out later. But like the 3 to 5 days, do less, walk, do some yoga. Remember, this is your high hormone phase. Okay. Getting back to tool 3 though, how would you apply it? This looks like strength training 2 to 5 times per week using progressive overload and walk daily. I do believe in hitting your steps. We were not meant to sit and be stagnant. I do suggest most clients aim for 10 to 12K steps a day. Or if that seems like really unrealistic, how about 10-minute walk after 2 meals? Your behavioral anchor, strength, and steps. And now your bonus tool to kind of tie this all in is creating a caloric deficit. Small, tiny deficit of 200 to 300 calories, enough to shift fat loss while protecting hormones. Again, you don't need to do a big cut. Why? This is going to backfire. The cortisol, the hormones, all of that stuff. So think small trims create fat loss that feels almost invisible. Your body doesn't panic. Your hormones stay steadier. This is the slow way, but I say all the time, slowly is truly the fastest way. This is if you want sustainability and you want to be able to live your life. And how would you apply it? You start with those anchor habits above. You get tool 1, tool 2, tool 3 in place. Tool 3 in place. And once you have those in place, download an app like Chronometer, which I really love because it shifts the focus from just calories to it shows you a total breakdown of all the nutrients you're intaking, from potassium to your B vitamins, all of that good stuff. And remember, the point isn't restriction here, it's refinement. We want to slowly adjust things like our carbs and our fats while keeping our protein and fiber high. You'll find in the show notes a detailed breakdown of my quick meals, which are all going to give you over 35 grams of protein. With my power chia pudding, wild salmon salad, I have a vegan version that includes my beloved lupini beans and my favorite ever lemon chicken veggie soup. Now, I want to bring this all together. Let's recap with your action steps. Your first tool is going to be plate first, protein and fiber, then add on. Number 2 is going to be your power breakfast, protein earlier in the day, eating with those rhythms. Number 3 is going to be strength and steps. That's a tongue tire. Build muscle, walk more. Why do we want to walk more? Everything balances blood sugar, lower stress, and it helps to improve your NEAT because when you're in a deficit, your NEAT is naturally going to lower. And I want you to refine. Don't drastically restrict. Okay, action step is to pick one of these tools, start today, and then slowly add on. And before we wrap, just know that hormones don't work in isolation. So we want to make sure that we're not that. Oh my gosh. Before we wrap, just know that hormones don't work in isolation. Things like the health of our gut, the health of our liver, the balance of estrogen to progesterone, and life stages like perimenopause all play a role in how easily or stubbornly your body changes. Don't worry, we'll cover all of these in more detail in future episodes, including how to support fat loss in perimenopause and how to balance estrogen for smoother cycles. But for now, focus on the 3 tools above. Pick one tool today, add it in, and then add on. Thank you so much for listening to the NTG Method Podcast. If you love today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. And remember, lasting health isn't about rules. It's about tools you can use for life. See you next time. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, supplements, or lifestyle.